This is Diane Gildahouse on graphing the trig function f of x equals -3 cosecant 2 theta plus 1. So this is kind of the finished project that I end up with when I graphed the equation, and this is just going to be a step-by-step walking through the process. So basically, what I noticed when graphing the function was that we had this translation of +1 here. So basically, this means that the entire graph, this is in fact affecting this whole part of the equation. And as a result is going to translate the graph up 1. So our midline is going to be here instead of at 0, which is going to affect our whole graph. And one important thing to note when graphing cosecant like this is that we actually are graphing 1 over the cosine of theta, and in order to do so, we are first going to need to graph this equation as if it was actually, you're actually graphing the cosine of this equation. And when we think about graphing cosine, we think about starting at one point and ending at the same sort of point, like one space above the graph, or starting one below the graph. And cosecant, we know, usually starts at 1 because cosecant of 0 is equal to 1. And we can know that from graphing it on our unit circle. So basically, because we've been translated up 1, then we would think that we would start at 2, probably. However, we have to keep in mind that we do have a negative out in front of this function, which means we are going to have to take the inverse of the function. So this is the corresponding, output of if we were switch the f of x and theta and solved for f of x would give us the inverse of the function. So basically we know that this negative means that we're going to start, we would be starting at -1 instead of +1, like we said earlier. However, we also have to keep in mind this 3 is affecting our graph here, our identity, and so this means that the amplitude is being multiplied by this. So when we think about it, if we're thinking in terms of cosine of 0 is equal to 1. And if this is equal to 1, then 3 times 1 is going to be just 3. So that would translate our graph 3 above the line and 3 below the line. We're going to start with 3 below the line because we have this negative that's affecting the graph. But we can't quite start graphing yet until we have dealt with this 2 right here that is affecting theta. And because it's affecting theta, we know that this has to do with the period. And when dealing with the period, which is usually 2 pi, because that is a normal complete cycle on the unit circle. We have to take 2 pi and divide it by whatever number this is to figure out what our new period is going to be. And so in this case, it would just be pi. And that means that it's going to oscillate, the function is going to oscillate quicker, and it's going to be repeated faster because it's been divided by 2. And so once you have this graph of cosine, like so, then it's important to recognize that this is actually the graph of 1 over cosine of theta, which is cosecant. And 1 over cosine of theta means that these these curves right here are actually going to be facing in opposite directions because of the way that the graph situated. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching.